In a world that never stops changing, some truths remain timeless. Welcome to Deep Dive by Nos Nova, where ancient wisdom meets modern life.
Picture this. Suddenly, you become one of the most powerful people in the world. Every eye is on you, every ear waiting for your words. At that moment, you realize power is not just about privilege, it's about responsibility. But power comes with temptation. From the very first moment, people feel the urge to serve themselves instead of others. History shows that many who fall prey to this temptation often cross the boundaries of morality. Yet, the life of Marcus Aurelius stands as a remarkable example of resisting this very lure. As emperor of the Roman Empire, his authority was almost limitless. But he understood that true power was not meant for self-interest, it was meant for service. In Meditations, he wrote that each day, one must examine the mind. With power comes moral duty. The challenge is not to act for yourself, but for the greater good. That is real strength. Take an ancient Roman example. A new governor takes office. On the very first day, wealthy merchants approach him with offers of support, hoping for favors in return. He is tempted. But Marcus Aurelius' philosophy reminds him, true strength is knowing how to master yourself. He chooses integrity, serves his people fairly, and within months, his province prospers. This is not just history. The same thing plays out today. Picture the CEO of a massive tech company launching a new product. Political and financial interests tempt him to hide flaws or sabotage competitors. But those who follow Marcus Aurelius' philosophy choose transparency and fairness. Their profits may be smaller in the short run, but in the long run they gain loyalty, respect, and legacy. The temptation of power is not limited to emperors or CEOs. It touches teachers, local politicians, even small administrators. Those who remain ethical leave a lasting impact. Marcus Aurelius teaches us, when power comes, it must not serve your ego, it must serve others. The impact on society is profound. Ethical leadership brings peace, trust, and prosperity. But selfish leadership breeds corruption and chaos. Marcus Aurelius' philosophy isn't just about personal morality. It is tied to the health of entire societies. Imagine two mayors of two different towns. One exploits his position for personal gain. Projects stall, trust collapses, and his city stagnates. The other follows Marcus Aurelius' path. Every decision is fair, every action accountable. His city thrives. Same power, different use, completely different outcomes. The temptation of power is not just a personal struggle. It is the line between a society's collapse or its progress. Marcus Aurelius shows us power is never for self. It is always for the greater good. Chapter 2. Lessons from history. In human history, stories related to power have often followed the same pattern. We see how people change once they gain power, whether in the lives of emperors, statesmen, or modern leaders. Marcus Aurelius, as a Stoic emperor, was always cautious against this temptation. He knew that gaining power was easy, but using it morally was difficult. First, let us look at history. Recall the story of the Roman Emperor Commodus. Commodus was the son of Marcus Aurelius. After his father's death, he became emperor. At first, he seemed to be a somewhat fair and effective ruler, but under the influence of power, his character completely collapsed. He began to impose his own will over the laws of the state, and his personal greed and arrogance caused massive harm to society. Commodus' abuse of power proves that being a ruler alone is not enough control. Morality and a sense of responsibility are essential. History is not limited to ancient Rome. The lives of medieval European kings also provide many lessons. Many kings made decisions for their own benefit and interests while ruling, which had severe negative effects on their subjects. For example, Francis Louis XIV called himself the Sun King. His greed and extravagant lifestyle weakened the kingdom economically. The people suffered from poverty and exploitation, while the king lived in luxury. This trend continues in the modern era as well. A very recent example can be seen in how some corporate CEOs or political leaders abuse power. Imagine a large corporation where the CEO uses company funds for personal gain through corruption. The ordinary employees and customers of the company are directly harmed. Even people in small towns feel the effects. If they are deprived of education or opportunities, the foundation of trust and equality in society is eroded. In this context, Marcus Aurelius teaches us power always comes with responsibility. He wrote, "Use the power you have been given to improve your own soul, not to deprive others of their rights." This is not just ancient Roman philosophy. It is highly relevant to modern society. When we see today's political or corporate leaders making decisions for their own benefit, we realize that the lessons of history still apply. Other stories of leaders from Marcus Aurelius' time are also significant. For example, Caracalla, who carried out oppression on the public in order to hold on to power. During his reign, the Roman Empire became unstable, and many people faced social and economic hardship. This reminds us of how crucial leaders' morality and judgment are for the stability of society. This raises the question, why do people become corrupted once they gain power? The reason is that power often comes with greed, arrogance, and unrestrained desire. Marcus Aurelius' Stoic philosophy becomes especially relevant here. He believed that a person who can control himself is the one capable of using power morally. This not only ensures personal growth, but also the well-being of the whole society. Therefore, if we learn from history, we see that the abuse of power is not only a personal disaster, it affects society as a whole. Commodus, Louis XIV, Caracalla, or modern corporate scandals all teach the same fundamental lesson. If power does not walk hand in hand with morality, society suffers. That lesson becomes even stronger when combined with the philosophy of Marcus Aurelius. He showed that a person who can control greed, arrogance, and the temptation of power sets an example not only for himself, but for society as well. This is not just a lesson of history, it is a practical guide for our lives. This chapter leaves us with two major questions. 1. If we gain power, will we use it for the welfare of society or for our own interests? 2. How can we learn from history so that we do not repeat the same mistakes? Chapter 3. The power of self-control. Question sounds so simple. How much control do you have over your life? But the answer is not simple. Marcus Aurelius believed that the true test of power comes when we fight against our inner desires and temptations. He wrote, "The person who can control himself is truly free." Even with power, if a person cannot control his greed, pride, and unchecked emotions, then he is a danger not only to himself but also harmful to society. History gives us many such examples. Commodus, whom we discussed in the first chapter, failed to control himself. He ignored the laws of the state to fulfill his own desires. In contrast, Marcus Aurelius controlled himself even when he was emperor. He knew that power itself was the ultimate test, and overcoming that test was the peak of morality. Now, let us look at the modern world. Consider the CEO or leader of a large corporation. In his hands lies enormous economic power and the ability to make decisions. Here, the temptations of greed, pride, or personal interest can easily push him out of control. But a CEO who can control his emotions and greed makes decisions for long-term welfare. For example, a CEO who could have easily fallen prey to personal bonuses and greed instead, by following Stoic principles, chooses to make decisions for the growth of the company and the well-being of its employees. As a result, not only does his organization benefit, but the entire economic environment improves. Self-control is not only for powerful figures. An ordinary person who can control his emotions, hunger, or greed also creates a major impact on society. Imagine a teacher or a government officer who, by restraining his small interests or greed, works with honesty. He not only sets an example for himself, but also strengthens trust and moral standards in society. Marcus Aurelius' Stoic philosophy teaches us that our emotions are often what cause harm. He wrote, "Keep your mind free. In every situation, control your own thoughts and actions. You cannot control others, but you can always control yourself." Does this only mean controlling anger, greed, or pride? No, it is deeper. It means, in moments of temptation for power, how we can choose morally and do what is right for society. As a modern example, we may take the life of Nelson Mandela. He spent decades in prison, yet he controlled his anger and desire for revenge. As a result, a moral and reconciled society was built in South Africa. Marcus Aurelius' Stoic principles fully apply here. Whether in times of power or lack of it, self-control is a person's true strength. Another example is Mahatma Gandhi. He did not desire power, but he was strict in his moral discipline. By controlling his emotions and desires, he had a massive impact on society. This proves that self-control and morality are complementary. Here lies an important lesson. Even with power, if we cannot control our emotions, greed, and pride, we will repeat the mistakes of history. But if we, like the Stoic philosophy, maintain control over ourselves, we can bring real and lasting welfare to society. Think of a small officer who works within the limits of his authority, puts aside his self-interest, and follows the path of justice. Even his small decisions have a major effect on society. A teacher in a school who gives proper education to children raises the moral standards of society. Marcus Aurelius' philosophy shows that self-control is not only the key to personal growth, but also to the progress of society. A crucial conclusion: whether one has power or not, self-control is a person's true strength. Marcus Aurelius' Stoic philosophy shows the path to this strength. It is not only for ancient Roman rulers, it applies to today's society as well. An ordinary person, an officer, a teacher, a CEO, or a statesman, if they learn to control themselves, they can improve both their own life and society. This chapter gives us a powerful message. Self-control is what makes society strong. Even with power, the ability to control one's emotions and greed is the real moral strength. Chapter 4. Power and morality. Power does not only mean power. It also carries responsibility. According to Marcus Aurelius' philosophy, the true use of power depends on morality. He wrote, "The person who governs morally is truly powerful." What does this mean? Is it only about following laws and regulations? No, it is deeper. It means that the decisions we make with power must be aligned with our moral standards. The analysis of the lives of many historical leaders shows that the misuse of power can push society toward destruction. We saw the example of Commodus in the previous chapter. His immoral actions not only led to his own downfall, but also threw the Roman Empire into instability. Even in modern politics, we see that when leaders prioritize personal interest and greed, the economic, social, and political stability of society is put at risk. A strong example is George Washington. After becoming the first president of the independent United States, he carried out his moral responsibility toward power. He had endless opportunities for personal gain, but he put aside his own interests and gave priority to the welfare of the country. One of his most important decisions was not to use the military for political purposes. This moral stance was a great lesson for his time. If we look at modern society, we see the same principle applies in both the corporate and political worlds. Consider a CEO of a large company who controls a massive budget and projects. If he acts only according to personal gain or greed, the greater welfare of the company or society is harmed. But a leader who uses power with morality can improve not only the institution but also the entire society. Marcus Aurelius said, "In difficult decisions, it is every person's duty to consider the moral side." This means that with power, it can be tempting to take the easy path for personal benefit. But a moral person always chooses the path of long-term welfare and righteousness. Here, a small story comes to mind. Consider a mid-level government official. He has the power to control budgets and policies. It is natural for him to feel greed or self-interest. But if he follows Stoic principles, he controls his greed and ensures the proper use of the budget. This moral behavior not only makes the project successful, but also strengthens public trust and society's confidence. In the same way, even small moral actions in society have larger impacts. A teacher who gives equal opportunities to all students and shows no favoritism sets a moral standard in society. Marcus Aurelius' philosophy shows that morality applies to power in both big and small cases. We also see that if morality is not considered in major decisions, it can harm not only the leader, but also the entire society. For example, Nelson Mandela. Even in the ultimate moment of power, he upheld moral values. For him, power was an opportunity not for personal gain, but for contributing to society's welfare. His moral decisions built South Africa into a stable and strong society. Now let us look at the modern political context. In many countries, when leaders and corporate figures ignore morality, corruption, inequality, and social unrest arise. Marcus Aurelius' philosophy applies here as well. If power is not used morally, the damage is not only personal, it becomes massive for society. The main lesson of this chapter is clear. Power means moral responsibility. According to Marcus Aurelius' philosophy, having power means having the opportunity to influence society through your decisions and actions. If you act morally, you can strengthen and stabilize society. But if you fall under the pressure of greed and self-interest, society will also suffer the consequences. Final thought: to walk the path of morality when you hold power is true strength. Marcus Aurelius' Stoic philosophy teaches us that morality and power are not separate, they complement each other. A moral leader is not only a blessing for himself, but also for the entire society. Chapter 5: Corruption and Social Harm. Corruption is one of the greatest dangers to society. It not only causes personal damage, but also disrupts the wider community, economy, and political stability. According to Marcus Aurelius' philosophy, when power lacks morality, society heads toward destruction. He wrote, "The person who follows greed and self-interest is unfit to bear the weight of society." History offers countless examples. In the Roman Empire, we saw that when leaders like Commodus used power for destructive purposes, the empire fell into instability. But moral leaders like Marcus Aurelius were able to keep society stable. This contrast clearly shows that moral leadership is essential for the welfare of society. The same thing happens in modern times. Take the corporate world, for example. If the CEO or corporate leaders of a large company turn to corruption or selfishness, the entire economy is affected. For instance, we can look at the Enron scandal. The illegal and immoral decisions of the company's top executives forced thousands of people to lose their jobs. This incident proves that the morality of leadership is not only important for individuals or institutions, but also for society as a whole. Corruption is even more complex in politics. If a country's leader, upon gaining power, turns to personal gain, public trust is broken. For example, political corruption in both domestic and international contexts during the 1990s proved that when principles and morality are undermined, a country's economy, healthcare, and education sectors all suffer. Marcus Aurelius' philosophy is highly relevant here. If power is not used morally, the greater welfare of society is put at risk. Ordinary citizens also feel this impact. Consider the corruption of local government officials. If they misuse budgets for personal gain, the quality of education, healthcare, or public safety declines. Even small examples show that the absence of morality harms the most vulnerable members of society the most. According to Marcus Aurelius' Stoic philosophy, through self-control and morality, we can reduce these effects. For example, think of a government official who maintains transparency in contracts or budgets. His moral behavior not only makes the project successful but also strengthens society's trust and confidence. Corruption causes not only economic harm but also social damage. When people see that their leaders or influential figures are morally incapable, they lose hope and the values of society erode. According to Marcus Aurelius, a moral leader does more than uphold principles. He guides society toward a stable and just structure. Another important aspect in this chapter is that corruption is contagious. When one leader or official fails morally, those around him are also influenced. Lower-level officials begin to act selfishly, and the moral standards of society decline. Marcus Aurelius was clear on this point. If you fulfill your moral duty, you set an example not only for yourself but for society as well. In conclusion, corruption harms every level of society, economic, social, and political. Marcus Aurelius' Stoic philosophy teaches us that when one holds power, it is every person's duty to walk the path of morality. Not only leaders, but the actions of every citizen are important for the stability and progress of society. Chapter 6. Integrity in Major Decisions. The major decisions that come with power have a deep impact on society. The life of Marcus Aurelius teaches us that the morality of a leader or influential person is tested not only in small matters, but also in great decisions. Choosing the path of selfishness or greed during such moments is dangerous for society, but making decisions with integrity not only benefits the individual, but also stabilizes and improves the entire community. As emperor, Marcus Aurelius himself faced countless major decisions. In matters of war, policymaking, and justice, he followed the path of morality guided by Stoic philosophy. He believed that power meant not just ruling, but responsibility. For every major decision, he would ask himself, is this decision beneficial for society? Am I acting with integrity? This practice helped him lead his empire towards stability and lasting structure. History shows that those who chose greed or self-interest in major decisions eventually failed. For example, some of Napoleon Bonaparte's decisions led his empire toward destruction. The outcome of selfish and arrogant decisions was political instability, economic crisis, and the loss of human lives. Marcus Aurelius' moral perspective was the key to avoiding such disasters. In modern life, we see similar examples. Consider major corporate or political leaders. When a CEO makes decisions about new projects or investments, his integrity and honesty affect not only the company, but also the lives of many people. For instance, during Nelson Mandela's time, South Africa's reconstruction involved major political decisions that ensured national unity and justice. Mandela's integrity and honesty became an example, not only for his country, but also for the entire world. Integrity in major decisions is never easy. Sometimes opportunities arise to pursue personal gain, but choosing the moral path requires courage. Stoic leaders like Marcus Aurelius taught that courageous and moral decisions create lasting welfare for society. A small example: consider a school principal deciding on budget allocations or teacher appointments. If he acts selfishly, students suffer. But if he makes decisions with integrity, not only do students benefit, but teachers also gain confidence, and the entire institution becomes healthy and effective. Integrity in major decisions is not only A moral aspect, but also a strategic and practical one. A moral leader earns trust in the long term, reduces conflict and competition, and strengthens the stability of society. Marcus Aurelius' philosophy sets the standard for this process. Morality and the welfare of society must always take precedence over personal interest. Chapter 7. Understanding the limits of power. Power is like a weapon when used properly. It can improve society, but when misused or overused, it leads to destruction. The Stoic philosophy of Marcus Aurelius teaches us that a leader's greatest strength lies in knowing himself and recognizing the limits of his power. Power is never permanent, and no one can control everything. Marcus Aurelius stood at the peak of the Roman Empire, yet he knew his power was limited. In governing the state, it was not only important to remain loyal to principles and morality, but also to acknowledge practical limitations. He realized that unnecessary repression or attempts at excessive control could destroy rule itself. History shows us that those who failed to recognize the limits of power eventually met failure. For example, when Louis XIV or Chairman Mao disregarded the boundaries of their power, their rule ended in disaster and the suffering of the people. When boundaries are ignored, power itself becomes the cause of its own destruction. The same principle applies in modern society. Consider a large corporation or a head of state. If they do not recognize the limits of their power, if they attempt excessive control or make selfish decisions, the economy, security, and social stability of the company or nation suffer. This teaches us that no matter how great power may be, it must always be exercised within limits. This philosophy is clear in Marcus Aurelius' own life. He understood that even as emperor, by practicing personal restraint and respecting limitations, he could maintain stability within the empire. This is the essence of Stoic philosophy. Recognizing the limits of power equals moral leadership. As a practical example, in the modern world, some successful CEOs or leaders have shown that when they respect the limits of their own power, both their institutions and society benefit. They know when to make decisions, when to step back, and when to rely on the power and wisdom of others. This ability to recognize limits makes their leadership strong and morally sustainable in the long term. Another important aspect of recognizing limits is understanding one's own mental and moral boundaries. Marcus Aurelius said that a person must also recognize the limits of his greed, pride, and emotions. If we fail to recognize our own mental and moral limits, then power will control us instead of us controlling power. This applies not only to leaders but also to the everyday lives of ordinary people. A small example: consider a school principal who tries to keep all control in his own hands. He ends up taking away the independence and creativity of teachers. As a result, the institution suffers in the long run. But if he understands the limits of his power and delegates authority wisely, teachers can work freely, students benefit, and the whole institution remains stable. Chapter 8. Great impact through small steps. We often think that bringing about major change in society requires grand actions. But the Stoic philosophy of Marcus Aurelius, along with real-life examples, shows us that small moral actions can also create a huge impact. First, let us think of an ordinary person. Suppose there is a junior officer in a city. His job is to verify citizens' documents. Every day, he performs his duty with honesty. He does not grant undue favors, nor does he bow to greed or temptation. This may seem like a small job, but the consistent effect of this small honesty can morally influence the entire office or even society. One honest officer inspires another. Others, seeing his integrity, are encouraged as well. This chain of small actions ultimately brings about great change. Marcus Aurelius believed that character is built through small, everyday actions. If a leader or even an ordinary person fulfills his daily responsibilities with honesty, then culture of integrity and morality spreads throughout larger sections of society. This creates a kind of moral domino effect. Consider a real example: a teacher in a small school who provides moral education in class. She teaches her students how small acts of honesty, helping a friend, keeping promises, avoiding lies, can have a big impact on society. When those students grow up and enter the world, they carry those values with them and inspire the next generation as well. In modern life, the corporate world also offers examples. Imagine a junior manager making small ethical decisions for his team, managing budgets with transparency, supporting employees properly, and giving credit to others. At first, these may seem minor, but over time, these small actions transform the culture of the team and the company, leading to long-term business success and a model of ethical leadership. Marcus Aurelius used to say, "Today's small actions are the foundation for tomorrow's greater outcomes." In his meditations, he wrote that everyday moral acts ultimately shape both personal and social character. Moreover, the influence of small steps is not limited to offices or schools. The way we treat our family, friends, or even strangers through small moral gestures can have a great effect on society. For example, a shopkeeper in a small town who serves his customers with honesty. At first, this seems important only for the local community, but gradually, his reputation for honesty makes him a source of inspiration for everyone. This cycle of small actions builds a broader social culture. In short, the core message of great impact through small steps is this: never consider small acts of morality and integrity to be insignificant. The philosophy of Marcus Aurelius teaches us that daily moral awareness and small ethical actions can beautifully transform both our lives and society. Chapter 9. The New Generation in Education. To keep society moral and strong, it is essential not only to guide the present generation, but also to instill the right values in the new generation. In his meditations, Marcus Aurelius repeatedly emphasized that no matter how powerful a leader or individual may be, his greatest influence comes when he passes on his moral teachings and philosophy of life to the next generation. Let us first think of the example of a school in a small town. A teacher not only teaches his students academic subjects, but also imparts the values of dedication, honesty, patience, and responsibility. These small daily lessons and behaviors play an important role in shaping the student's character. When these small examples grow within them, the students eventually enter society as strong and moral leaders. Marcus Aurelius said, "Look to yourself first, then inspire others." This means that an individual must first build his own character and then guide others through his teachings. When students of the new generation embrace this moral education, they can later have a powerful impact on society as leaders, teachers, officials, and citizens. There are modern examples as well. Imagine a senior manager in a technology company who not only teaches his juniors coding, but also teaches them to work with integrity, respect others, and admit their mistakes. At first, this may seem small, but the influence of this moral guidance is very significant. When these juniors rise to higher positions, they spread this ethical culture throughout their teams and the entire company. A political example is also noteworthy. When Nelson Mandela educated the new generation of South Africa, he did not teach only politics, but also forgiveness, morality, and cooperation. This education later left a lasting impact on the political and social culture of the country. According to Marcus Aurelius' Stoic philosophy, educating the new generation means safeguarding society in the long run. If we use education to strengthen moral values, the new generation will remain free from social and political corruption and will build strong, ethical leadership. Moreover, the role of the family is crucial. If parents, grandparents, or guardians allow their children to make moral decisions, teach them through their small mistakes, and reward them for honesty, then the children will adopt these values as part of their lives. From the small unit of the family to the larger structure of society, this creates a chain reaction. Chapter 1. A strong but moral society. When we can carry forward Marcus Aurelius's philosophy and moral teachings to the new generation, society becomes both strong and moral. The main goal of this chapter is to help the reader imagine such a society where leaders are powerful yet not corrupted, and their power is used for the welfare of the people. For example, imagine a fictional city called Luminara. Here, all leaders are powerful, but they have zero tolerance for corruption. Any leader who comes into power first examines his own moral standards. If any decision causes harm to society, he reviews and changes it. Small officials, teachers, businessmen, everyone follows the same ethical standards. The citizens of the city live peaceful, secure, and progressive lives. According to Marcus Aurelius, power means responsibility. Responsibility means control over one's own character. Because of this self-control, the leaders of Luminara, though powerful, are not corrupt. Their morality is not just about laws or regulations, but the very foundation of their behavior. Are also modern real-life examples that reflect this. Some successful and ethical leaders of nations have introduced new economic policies while maintaining fairness against corporate or political interests. For instance, Jacinda Ardern's leadership in New Zealand. Even in difficult circumstances, she upheld moral standards to ensure society was not harmed. This example shows that power and morality can coexist. A small but powerful example can be seen in a government officer who resists the temptation of corruption and stays on the path of honesty. His seemingly small decisions, such as awarding tenders fairly or strictly following administrative rules, have a huge impact on society. Citizens learn from his conduct, and the next generation follows these moral standards. The core message is that being strong and being moral are complementary to each other. If we are strong but not moral, society will collapse. But if we uphold morality according to Marcus Aurelius's philosophy, society will gradually become strong and progressive. You can use power in your own life today, whether in small or large matters. Small decisions, morality, honesty, all together can transform your life and society. You can be that leader who, though powerful, does not become corrupt, but instead moves society forward.